Right. Good morning, everybody. Let's open this Audit, Risk and Finance Committee with the karakia. Thanks, Stu.
Kia hora, kia rino, kia whakapapa punamo, te moana. Mahi mā tātou I te rangai, roho atu, roho mai, tata ia tātou katoa.
Thank you. Right, so apologies. We've got an apology from Councillor Ron, who's away, and Councillor Erin may be joining us.
For attendance or lateness.
Or attendance for lateness. Can I have a mover, please?
Happy to move.
Oh, sorry, a bit slow there, Councillor Ashes. You can second, Councillor
Yes.
Mike moved. You second. All those
Yes.
in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Confirmation of the agenda. I see no reason to change any of the order. No, right. So can I have a mover that we confirm the agenda to be held today? Councillor Jonathan, seconded. Thank you, Councillor Mike. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest that need to be declared? There are none noted. Public forum, there's no. First item, our 3.1, the confirmation of two lots of minutes. We take them together of both the meeting held 12th of September and 31st of August. Can I have a mover? Sorry?
I'm just checking that I was at both.
You were away.
I was away for one of them.
You were away.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to move. Oh, okay, Councillor Erin's joining us online. Morning, Councillor Erin. Right, so I'm happy to move both sets of minutes. Do I have a seconder? I think Councillor, Mayor Craig. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Carried. Right, our 4.1 on page 11 of the agenda, our work program. Thanks, Sue.
Yes, this is, just shows you what we're doing throughout the year, and we're at November meeting, which normally was held either late November or early December. The only thing that we haven't got for you this time is insurance report on the various insurances we've got, but Jessie will report verbally on this, and at some time later we'll give you a full report on that.
Okay, when is now an appropriate time for Jessie to give us an update on the insurance verbally? Thank you.
So we've just received our insurance premiums and had a bit of a market update from Aon. So our insurance premiums are $521,000 this year, which is up 9% on last year's premium. That's much better than our budget of 17% increases, which is largely due to the material damage premiums being less expensive than our expectation. So material damage is our most expensive policy, where our assets are pooled with other Northland councils. There's really good news in this space, as the rates that insurers are charging us have flattened and not increased for the first time in several years. So the increases that we see on the material damage premiums of 13% are solely related to increased asset values. And just with the $90 million revaluation of stock banks that we saw yesterday, the work required on improving our asset information, as well as the recent severe weather impacts in mind, it's important to note Aon are seeing a trend coming through with class action against councils following severe weather events. Insurers are indicating councils need to adjust for the increasing likelihood of severe weather events and be active in mitigating their risks. Also last week, I attended a local government funding agency conference where experts discussed smaller councils are unlikely to be bailed out by central government in the future in the case of large scale events, and to be prepared for loss of assets as a result of changing climate. Also affecting liability insurance, big market player Marsh has lost their insurers. And there is a decreasing appetite for providing liability insurance to local government. That's public and professional liabilities. And then professional indemnity insurance is now capped by insurers. So we are actually now pooled with 37 other councils across New Zealand. And between us all, there is a collective limit of $45 million for professional indemnity claims. So we are pooled with other councils to make those claims. And I think that's all I had on the market updates on insurance. If you had any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
I think that's.
Well, it's actually more of a statement, right? For those of you who've been in local government a long time, right? We'll remember in the early 90s, mid 90s, professional indemnity insurance. And that's when risk pool was created. And of course, now we're paying for the tail end of risk pool. So again, markets tend to go in cycles. But I think the issue for me is the climate change, right? That is going to severely impact people's ability, including local authorities, to get insurance in the future. And of course, people in the news would have seen there is threat of legal action against the Hawke's Bay Regional by ratepayers of Wairua District Council for the June of this year flood because they didn't open the bar. Just even that.
What's the reason again? Because they.
The claimants say that the regional council should have opened the bar, would have reduced the flooding. Now that's conjecture because there was also other evidence to say that they couldn't have opened the bar because of the opening the bar wouldn't have been effective because the high swell at the time would have made it ineffective. So I met with the Crown manager as part of the committee on Tuesday, and there's a whole lot of work happening in Wairua, but that is probably the last amount of government bailout, right? Whereas the government have promised 70 million for flood protection. And this is what the government are actually saying is the regional councils need to do more. And local authorities need to do more to protect people from flooding.
And both east and west are feeling effects of floods.
I think it's not just it's the extreme weather events, as you well know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that on the insurance. Any other questions on the work plan? No. None. So I've just got one, and maybe Jessie can help. The external audit we've got down, we discussed the management proposed letter in June. I know probably they issue it in May for the next year's annual.
We've got an update with Deloitte's management letter from the recent annual.
No. This is for next year's. We're looking at the work program. We've got that we're going to approve the audit arrangements letter for the external audit in June. And right.
Planning to do that earlier because of the engagement process needing to be.
Yeah, so then it's at the moment.
So
can we move
start
to March?
Yes, we will. Yeah.
And you might want to give Deloitte a bit of a head. Brilliant. Thank you for that. Thank you. Nothing further. So, lost my page.
Program.
Sorry?
Noting the work program.
Noting that, thank you. So can I have a mover that we note the work plan, the work program? Councillor Mike, seconded. Councillor Jonathan, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Next item, welcome back, Jesse. Don't know why you moved, right? 4.2, our Deloitte constructive report to management. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Philip. In this report, we're just attaching Deloitte's management letter on their findings from the audit of the 2024 annual report adopted yesterday. A lot of these are insignificant or immaterial, so I'll just talk about the most important issues. Procurement is arguably the most important practice to get right as a publicly funded entity due to the high dollar value, potential for fraud and reputational implications. So council has done a really good job recently strengthening and aligning the financial delegation and procurement policies. However, internal controls and record keeping are lacking, with the 3 concurrent audits focused on procurement showing us this. There are also issues with activity revenue collection and data management, which is decentralised across the organisation. I also see that there are problems in subsidy and grant revenue collection with external funding being missed or records not being kept consistently. So finance is not responsible for those, but I'm saying efficiencies could be gained if finance completed those. And also internally controlled procurement to prevent double handling. Finance team already needs to handle all of the contract claims to check for delegated authority sign off before making payments, and also needs to account for the revenue recognition and reporting the financial information correctly. The other material points from Deloitte are around the quality of our asset data, which we have just seen with our annual report has a material impact on the accuracy of asset valuations and therefore our risks, insurances and maintenance costs. A lot of work is required in the asset space, and these have been long-standing problems for KDC. Finance team just does not have the capacity to address these issues, and we have been also impacted by key asset manager role vacancies, which have just been filled. So I'm happy to take questions on any of Deloitte's points or matters of concern.
Or maybe we might escalate them to Sue or to the chief executive, right? Because some of them are actually organisational issues. So, yep, happy to take questions. Councillor Ash, you got a question? Can you just move your camera? Thank you. Thank you. You're on mute.
You're muted, Councillor Nair.
Still can't hear you.
Okay. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Well, I'm operating from 2 devices. I won't go into the details of the report, Chair, but I spent 1 hour. There's 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 1.67, and whatnot. I think the issue is not this year. The issue is, as Deloitte has mentioned, is coming from many years. So if we take the excuse of not having enough staff, it's unacceptable to me. For the reason that some of the things are very, very basic, like most processes are manual. I don't understand in this age why we are operating in a dark age, calculating, and we have fixed asset register. 2.3 has been provided as the answers to most of the objections from the finance team. And I would like some answers on that. Taking that the finance team is this and that, we can't take this, we can't take. Lot of objections, Chair, are very valid and very basic and very mandatory. So we can't just hide behind this excuse of not having staff or whatever. So I will like some clear answer for that. Thank you.
I'll let the chief executive respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry I was late, just in another meeting. Thanks, Councillor Nair. Look, the reality is you as a council asked us to save $1.5 million in salary budgets. That is the direction you gave me. That is what we have done. There are impacts as a result of that. We have the staff that we have. They are working really hard, really hard here, and they're looking forward to Christmas. So I'm not going to accept any criticism on our people when we're working so hard.
No.
Council gave me that direction. We achieved what you wanted. There are ramifications for that.
So can I ask you, Jason, did you fire the wrong person?
No,
Because as a CEO,
I did not.
you should be able to know.
It wasn't about firing people, Councillor Mayor. I was required to save the $1.5 million per year, which we did. I have restructured the teams to try and make us more efficient and effective. There are impacts on our technology as well. You've got to understand history to understand where we are. In the 10 years ago, it was a very manual operating council, paper-based as well. We've invested quite a lot in our IT and our processes, but there's still more investment to be made, and there's still more work to be done to make us more efficient. I acknowledge that. However, we have the people that we have, and they're working really hard to get the work done. I would also like to point out that the council has actually added to our workload with things like consultation. There are a lot of consultations happening with the community. That all adds up to extra work that is part of the picture. And you got to also understand that in the last year, we've had to bring Waters back into the organisation. We've had to bring roading back in the organisation. We've had that structure change as well, and that'll take 12 months to bed in, whether you like it or not. And that is just the situation we're in at the moment. I'm just calling a spade here.
No, thank you for that. My concern is only one. Deloitte has a right to be resigning from their situation. They have done it in several billion, like hundreds of $billion deal in Kenya. They were not happy with the state of Audit and Finance Committee chairperson actually had to resign. So what I'm worried about is these, maybe chair can explain on it. Is it quite usual to have what we have here?
So you're asking me a question? Absolutely. Look, and I think the chief executive has explained it. This is, I am yet to see an auditor not give any recommendations. Okay. This is, I would say, while it's not a happy report, right? The question I'm going to ask the chief executive and Sue is on an ongoing basis. The question for me is, as a result of this, right, are there any increased risks to the issues, Jesse's talked about fraud, right, financial reporting, right? What are the things, the top 5 things that can't happen because we don't have enough resources, and what are the consequences? And I think that's probably /risk. So Jesse's talked about lack of procurement as an example. So because we don't have the resources to actually have a centralised procurement, what are the consequences and what are the risks, right? And that to me is the question I think I would want to ask the chief executive. I'm not going to ask him to do it now, but maybe for the March meeting, as a result of this, what are the high level things that, so everyone is aware of the consequences of what the chief executive has just talked about. Yep. I think that's the appropriate process. All right. Are you happy with that?
I am very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you mind if I just sort of say a couple of things? So, obviously, we will absolutely take into account the auditor's report. We can't just ignore that. But what I would signal is if we don't have the internal resource to do what we need to do, we need to go through a process here and then find external resource to help us. And so I've said this to the council many times, the staff level goes down, the consultant spend will go up in certain areas. And that's just that's how it works. So, we'll have to do our best to try and adjust.
And that's what I'm saying is there are some things, right? You can never do everything, right? So what are the things you can't do and what are the consequences? And I don't want to list everything. What are the key consequences, right? What are the key risks for council, right? And using procurement as an example. I'm not saying that's the top one, right? But I think the issue that I have is, and maybe Sue and the Chief Executive can respond, are there any additional risks in terms of lack of internal control, right? Because we sometimes, have you got the appropriate internal controls considering the resources that are available? And I don't expect an answer now, but that's the sort of thing. Councillor Aaron?
Thank you. Good morning. Apologies for my lateness, but I wasn't as late as I thought I'd be because everything else got cancelled today, so that was good. I just wanted to ask kind of a similar question, and that's around just noting that there are a number of outstanding items from the previous audit. Was there anything in there that the CE or Sue are particularly concerned about?
Through the chair, yeah, we are concerned about the fixed assets and not being able to reconcile those. And what's happened is we haven't had an asset manager for a year in Roden, and also lacking in water. And so we've had no one who's been in charge of RAM or the other systems, and it's been really frustrating and not a good use of our staff or the auditors, and it results in increased audit fees. So that's something that we see we need to get better at, but we need to have the staff in other departments as well as on our.
And I'll just add through the chair to effectively manage our assets. We actually need to know what they all are and understand their value. So that's the key part that needs to be done, in my view, as well. And that's the key part that will lead to materiality problems in the audit, because we could have significant changes and differences.
And through the chair, the procurement, we know there's issues there. A lot, well, not a lot, but some of our suppliers may not be using the correct methodology. Yeah. And we need to have checks ensuring that. This year our audit, because of the external suppliers, that there was lots of issues there because other departments were keeping tabs on that, and we had a lot of issues in the audit because of that. So there's things that can be improved that we know about, but we just can't always have the resource put into it during the year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions that will come up, risk related, that will come up at a later phase relating to the staff scenario. But if I may ask the CEO, as far as the restructure goes and our learnings that we've had, it's been a relatively short time. And as we know, a lot was impacted the previous year because we couldn't find people, right? And that's a big reason why we had a deficit in the remuneration budget. So moving forward, are you applying a learn as we go in terms of where you might adjust staff in different departments, different areas, as requirement or as need really does show through as being critical?
There's a balancing act, right? So, through you, Mr. Chair, sorry. There's a bit of a balancing act here because, the staff have been through a significant change period already. People are moved into different jobs, we've lost people, all that. So they never underestimate the impacts of that. That takes time to bed in the new structure. You'll be aware on the Remuneration Development Committee, there's a couple of phases to this. The big bang phase 1 has been done, phase 2 is done and it's rotating, and phase 3, just a few tweaks around the edges here that we've done. So we're completed that as well. To answer your question more specifically, yes, of course we do. But, I'm very mindful that we've just gone through what is a big change to every pretty much role. And whilst it sounds from your perspective to say, we need to focus on a different area and then reduce over here. In theory, in practice, that's really difficult to do as well. you know, when you take employment law and all those sort of considerations into place, right?
Absolutely, no challenge to that. That's not what, that's not where I'm coming from.
But I can give you a good example, okay? Now, you know, the AMO work is an example. I mean, finance is also another one, but I'll go with the AMOs right now. In that, you know, it's been clear, it's been reported to council that the AMO work has increased considerably. They're kind of self-funding, not totally, but, you know, partly self-funding, an extra role in council type thing. And, you know, the community's been hanging out for more work in this space, right? So, you know, that's an example that, you know, we mentioned at the annual plan briefing the other day. And the commentary from council was, well, you know, are you making sure that you reduce here to increase here? Which brings me back to that point. It's not that easy to do.
No.
But learning organisation, 100%. Absolutely.
Councillor Aaron, did you have enough further question?
Well, I kind of did, but I thought maybe Mike was asking it. I was just I guess I'm hearing what the CE and Sue are saying here, and I guess my question was like from what I'm hearing is we've had a restructure, we've been asked to cut staff budgets. That's having a flow-on effect here. I mean, our audit report is one of the most important reports that council has to deal with. How do we feed that back into all of council? Because further cuts, I just think, from what I'm hearing, are going to be untenable.
Me, I suppose it's for me. Thanks, Councillor Wilson-Collins. Yeah, no, look, I'm not supportive of further cuts. You know, we've gone through the big change. I've been clear about that from the outset. We are where we are now. Tweaking around the edges, yes, when we can, to make sure that we have the resource where we can. Sure, absolutely. What I signalled before is if, you know, there is, and let's be honest, this management-led staff needs to take priority, and we need to really understand that work and then resource it. And that could be external resource to get that work done based on what the auditors have said. Because, as you've seen in the audit report, you know, some things we just haven't got the resource to get to. And I would imagine if I'm sitting here in a year's time and, you know, a lot of these management leader is very similar and nothing's been done, that's probably not going to be that acceptable to the committee and council. So we're going to have to resource it. And I suppose what I'm saying is there needs to be an understanding about that.
Correct. Any further questions or comments? I've got a couple. Now, the first comment is actually for elected members, right? If you look on page 25, it's the complete members register. That to me is actually a risk for elected members, right? It's not actually a risk for staff. It's actually, you get that one wrong, right? And there are consequences for elected members. So I just draw that to probably everyone's attention that I can. And just, no, this bugs me, right? I know it's only a minor matter, Sue, right? It's about the depreciation calculation on sub-base, right? Right? Because I actually fundamentally disagree that you should actually be depreciating. I haven't heard of anyone else depreciating sub-base around the countryside, right? But hearing the chief executive, the problem you have is you actually haven't got a strong roading asset manager who's telling the valuer, we don't replace our sub-base, therefore the useful life is indefinite, therefore there is no, right?
I think we have a situation of, through the chair, some of our sub-bases are being replaced, a very, very small amount, which is creating a very, very...
And that's, yeah, but because you don't actually have that, the valuer is seeing one snap, who's actually, and without that discussion with an asset manager, because you don't have a roading asset manager, right? You can't, the valuer is just going off that, and the auditors love valuers, right? To me, is the useful lives should actually be set and by the asset manager and approved by the valuer. Mayor Craig.
Yeah, let's be very clear about the other side of this issue is actually sourcing the right people positions is the other side of the issue. It's not that we're created a situation necessarily where because of reconciling our staff structure that's created the problem particularly with the rating is finding those people that we need. And I think Stu has also had those issues. The accounting department, haven't you? You solved that a lot without it pretty recently, but you did have a period where you had very tough issues trying to get, people.
It's correct, we've had quite a high staff turnover.
Yep.
And yeah, over the last couple of years, because it's just been too much for them to do.
Yeah, and just supporting Sue on that comment. I see one or two councils around the countryside. There is huge churn in local authorities at the moment. It's finance. It's almost like a domino effect. So I see one finance manager move from one council, and then another finance manager moves to that council, which then creates a vacancy, and another finance manager moves to that council. So, and I'm seeing, that's just in the finance space, and I see it happening right across the whole country, right? So that to me is, and with you've got the uncertainty of government reforms, etc. It's where local government is in a tough space.
Through the chair, can I just add that the finance team actually does have the skills, and we just don't have enough time. So we know the issues and we know how to fix them and we know how to make them better. Yeah.
And I'm not supporting you in this. Also seeing, right, is through the audits and the LTP. Here was the standard 3 years ago. The standard is now here, right? That's right, and it's actually driving people to distraction because all of a sudden these standards are now being audited.
If I could just add, Mr. Chair, so acknowledge that, Mr. Mayor, you're 100% correct. It is a difficult district to get. We've got good people in our organisation with good skills set to back GC up to, but it is a difficult district to recruit to. It is very hard to find the right people to do the jobs, and when we do, we try and do our best to hold on to it.
Actually, almost a risk in itself, isn't it?
It almost is. Yeah,
absolutely.
The other thing I'd say here, and we can't forget this, is the impact of central government and what they do on us. And you're like, we've been running around spending time and effort on Three Waters for 4 years, and we're nowhere forward, right? So that churn is incredible, and the amount of the soft cost in the background sorting all that out is amazing. That's not ever acknowledged anywhere. But also another good example is the regional deals work, which has just been foisted upon us. The rest of this month, December and January, to meet the government timeframes. All of that stuff adds resource and workload that wasn't already there. And I don't want to paint a bad picture. We're all trying our best to do the job, and we're working with council, of course. I'm not being completely negative here. I'm just being realistic about what's happening in the environment. That's all. Thank you.
And all I can give the committee is assurance, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
We're aware.
Right. So no further comments or questions? We've got a recommendation there that the committee notes the audit constructive report to management. Can I have a mover, please?
So,
thank you, Mayor Craig. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Mike. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. 4.3, our finance report. Thanks, Jessie.
Thank you, Philip. This is the July to October financial results for council, and I did present this yesterday at council meeting. I'll take it as read and wait for your questions if you have any.
Are there any questions? They probably had them all yesterday.
Yeah.
I've got, okay, if there's no questions, I've got one. The bit that I've highlighted here is, and again, sorry, Mr. Chief Executive, right? It comes back to the NZTA subsidy was it not submitted for September, October, or wasn't submitted on time for?
Wasn't submitted for September, October, not yet submitted for November or any of those months. Yeah.
But it's been now submitted.
No, it's not been now submitted.
Controlled by our department.
I know it's not, yeah, I know, I'm not blaming, right? The issue is, right? So Paul, right? The chief executive in the hot seat, sorry, right? Right, so again, right, we were talking before about some of the.
Yeah, this is directly a resource issue. We've got a person in there that's getting up to speed and doing the work. We don't want to submit the claims unless they're tickety-boo, I suppose is the unofficial term, correct. And we just need to go through that process to make sure that they're correct. And we're doing that at the moment. We will submit them for sure. We need to, and we can't forgo the funding. But, we just need to make sure they're right before we go to stop any rework and further, mucking around after that.
So, Chair, one of the key things that they're looking at is the reallocation of overheads. Because you restructure NTA, it has flow-on effects. You have to recalculate your overheads.
Yeah.
They're trying, and my understanding is they're trying to work that out. It's taking a little bit longer and challenging for them. So, we are lucky we are in the situation we are where our cash flow is not as impacted, but it's 3 million that should be in our bank account rather than NZTA.
So that's my, thank you. So the question I have is, because you only get subsidy for what you have spent, but if you haven't spent the money,
We have.
right, you have spent the money, that's, so the figure that is quoted there is not the budgeted figure, but the actual estimate of what we should have received from NZTA.
Yes, I estimate we're about $3 million waiting on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. If I may add, Mr. Chair, we did establish yesterday that that deficit is more than covered. Be charged.
Yep. It's a timing issue, right?
Yeah.
We will get it. They're not going to withhold it from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And sorry, Mr. Chief Executive, right? You're in the hot seat. But stay over there, right? The other question to it, and I know we've got a significant capital works plan, right, as shown on page 44. We're not main of council, but I'd really be keen to see in the new year, right, and particularly in the March meeting at a high level, what are the consequences of not achieving that capital works plan? Okay, because it's, we've got 70 million for the year to do. The 4 months to October, we've only achieved 10. I know roading's a big number, and it will be done predominantly in the warmer months, just like the people who are trying to travel along State Highway in January are going to have to take a 110 kilometre diversion because that's when the construction season starts. Councillor Ash, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just supporting you on this one, but coming back to your original comments about capital works and the flood protection in some other council, we have a similar situation here. If you look at the capital works, we haven't spent not even 20% of what the money we took. And I think it's a risk both for NRC and for Kaipara District Council in a big way in terms of what we are able to achieve. The focus is probably has to be shifted to what we have to do rather than what we can do. What's the view on that?
My view is that's a council decision because council actually sets the capital budget, right? So while yes, the chief executive is then charged with delivering it, it's actually up to council to set the capital budget. Yeah. And so the next year's annual plan will be the appropriate time for council to consider that. That's what that's my. But again, so you've got to ask the question when you adopt the annual plan for next year. The question collectively you should be asking the chief executive: is this how achievable is your capital works plan, right? And what have you got in place now? There's a fallacy that we're actually taking the money from the ratepayer earlier. The majority of these works, correct me if I'm wrong, Sue or Jessie, would be actually the unspent money is predominantly loan funded.
That's correct.
So we're not actually asking the ratepayer to pay for something that we're not actually delivering yet.
The roading that has the most rating impact.
Yep. Thank you. Any further questions on the finance reports? Any further comments? All right. Can I have a mover that we receive we note the finance report? Councillor Mike, Second, Councillor Mayor Craig, sorry. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Right, thank you. Jesse, next item, 4.4, page 47. Our Treasury report. Thanks, Julia.
Morena koutou, called Julia Aho. I present to you the Treasury report for the period ended September 2024. It's for information only to update you on the financial position of Council with 4 key ratios and whether we're complying with Treasury policy. If you note on page 2 of the Treasury report, and this is sort of more specifically an answer to a question that was raised yesterday in the council meeting with regards to the impact of the increase on fixed assets on our ratios. There's a brief explanation on page 2 as to how those ratios are calculated. Fixed assets don't bear any direct relation to the ratios, it's more the debt. And the increase that we experienced in our annual report didn't have any impact on our debt. The ratios more show our ability to repay debt. And we need to prove that we can, hence they're covered by financial governance covenants that we have to send to the LGFA on an annual basis. And as noted in the September 2024 report, I'm pleased to report that we remain fully compliant and we're adhering to all Treasury policy ratios, including those related to interest rate risk. One thing further to note, the $10 million loan that in the report is maturing on the 15th of October has now been repaid. If you recall, we were using a term deposit that had been ring fenced for this purpose. So as we stand at the moment, 28th of November, our current total debt is reduced to 44 million. There's currently 18.5 million in our on-call account. As at the end of September, it was attracting 5.25% per annum because it's the same as the OCR, the official cash rate, which, as you know, was reduced in August by 25 basis points to 5.25. And there was a further reduction made by the RBNZ yesterday. It was 50 basis points, so it's now reduced to 4.75. However, the landslide victory of Donald Trump in the recent US elections and his promise to increase tariffs on imported goods has now added a layer of complexity to economic outlooks. If Trump follows through with his tariffs, this could push up prices globally, which will add inflationary pressure to economies struggling to bring inflation under control. So for New Zealand, this could mean higher costs for imports, making inflation stickier than anticipated. And if inflation doesn't fall as expected, the RBNZ might hesitate to continue cutting rates. And if trade wars or higher tariffs do occur, the New Zealand dollar may well weaken in response. This could push inflation higher and again lead to the RBNZ to reconsider further rate cuts. Aside from this, all else remains as reported in the report. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Thanks, Councillor Ash.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question is, well, I've driven it many times and I have to keep drumming it. We have $28 million in the account. We are paying interest for having overdraft facilities. We are paying $2 to $3 million, I think it's $3 million a year interest on $44 million, which is 6% of the ratepayers' money. So somewhere, and we have capital works program, which we cannot execute. Is it time for us to relook at our priorities, how much money we need to keep and how much money we can pay and we can borrow again?
I may direct through the chair. I'm not sure where you're getting the overdraft information from, councillor Nair. We don't have an overdraft.
You have two overdraft facilities, if I remind you, they are
That's
$5
right.
million each. And you
Yes.
pay interest for keeping that. There is a fee
No.
for that.
No, we don't. We have the facilities available should we need them, and we need to have them. It's part of the financial covenants as part of the LGFA. They're currently unused. And so we don't.
I understand that they are unused, but
We
we
can't-
have them. That's, yeah. Anyway,
we
we
do.
won't get into there. All I'm saying is
Yeah.
we are sitting on tons of money. We are sitting on a lot of unfinished projects, and we are sitting on loans through our years, and we are paying interest. I don't understand what kind of business we are running here. So that's my opinion or question. Or the chair say, well, that's the way the local government works. So good on him. I leave it to chair to comment.
You're asking me for comments, so basically.
Yes,
I've got a
but
quick-
you're the most experienced person
Yeah, I
around,
think-
so.
Yeah,
yeah.
can I just, help, right? And I'm gonna ask a question of the finance team. Those unused facilities, that my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that you are required to have them. So if you were unable to refinance loans through LGFA, you've got the cash available. That's one of the principles of it. And there have been a long time ago before LGFA, there were councils that actually got themselves into that position. I remember, well, it wasn't one of mine, but there was some. Right? The question I have is, what's the facility fee that we pay?
Oh,
It's normally, sorry, I don't want to put words in your,
0.45%.
yeah, I was going to say, it's normally
Managed to get a reduction.
2.5
Yeah.
and 0.5, so 0.5%, not, right? So, and that's a requirement of our covenants with LGFA. So if we didn't have that in place, we couldn't borrow from LGFA and we'd have to go to the market and would actually be paying a lot more in interest. So it's part of our overall interest costs, right? I think the other issue we have is you're saying we've got cash on hand as this report. Now, this report is as of September. The financial report as of October had that being repaid. Is that correct? Yes.
10 million's been repaid.
Repaid, so, yeah.
That's why it's now back down to 44.
That's correct. So our gross and net debt now is only, as of basically end of October, is only 44, not 54.
That's right.
Yep. So that to me is actually and then because we haven't done the capital works, should we do that capital works, we've actually got significant capacity as shown in these figures to actually borrow more.
Absolutely, yes.
So the question that I've faced from councillor Ash is, I think, council's not perfect, but it's actually in a reasonably good financial position.
Yes.
And if I may, Mr Chair, just endorse, going back to council is fully compliant with the level of debt ratios.
Yeah.
Our ratios are very low relative to the upper threshold that are set. So, the finance team have got us into a very good.
Right, yeah, and I would also say, look, I'm aware of some councils, right, that while the government have promised 500% for the waters, right, I know of one council that would need to be at 600% to achieve it. Ouch, okay? All right, so, that's what I'm saying is with those ratios in the middle table on page 48 are the current, right, are really, really important ratios.
Yep, those are what we are
Yep.
touched on by LGFA.
Through the chair, if I may ask a second question, a small one on depreciation. You mentioned that our council is doing depreciation on sub base, which is not the fact, which is not in other councils. What about the depreciating the stock banks? We reevaluated at $90 million, and should be depreciating it.
So through the chair, just to explain, from yesterday, and Deloitte said that stop banks weren't depreciable because of the fact that you're doing a lot of maintenance on them each
Yeah.
year or whenever. So they're staying basically the same, so council
Yeah.
don't need to depreciate. Agree with that.
And it's consistent across most local authorities that you actually don't depreciate stock banks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, comments? And I have a mover that we note the Treasury report for September. Mayor Craig, seconded.
I can second.
Thank you. Thank you, councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Next, thanks, Julia. Next report is our quarterly debtors report, page 51, 4.5. Thanks, Lani.
Good morning. I'm Lani, the Senior Revenue Officer on the Revenue team. And so just some key notes from the report. So the debt has reduced 639K from our last report. However, if we compare it to the same time last year, it's up slightly, about 50K, and that's mainly because of high penalties accruing in the abandoned land and the charging order buckets. We have completed our second step in the mortgagee demand process. So we've demanded all our mortgagees in November. That doesn't show on this report. So we do expect the mortgagee buckets to reduce in our next report. Just a reminder that that for land rates, it is debt from the prior to the 1st of July. It's not current debt. We do, you know, in regards to current debt, we're still trying to obviously manage that as best we can. The second instalment, the change in the date of the first instalment has confused people in the second instalment. And we're getting a lot of exceptions requested due to the hardship and, you know, for our current debtors. We're also monitoring mortgagee sales, and we've had about 8 mortgagee sales in the last year, so we are seeing a slow increase in that. I think hardship in the current bucket is probably the worst I've seen it in the last 5 years. Lots of people have been made redundant and people just can't make their payments. For water rates, the debt's a little bit out of sync in this report because we couldn't bill some of the water books in July because of the LTP extension. So that's why it looks quite high because we had to bill a whole lot of books in August. For sundry debtors, I think everything's ticking along there okay. We're following up that debt really quickly. We've done a lot of government funding invoicing, so we just have to manage the timing of that to make sure that we're getting those funds in quickly once we bill them, and that we have to provide a lot of information with them. And sometimes they want more information, and that can show us overdue on sundry debtors. But we can see that some of the older payment plans have reduced. So I think it's good that we have got people on payment arrangements and they are paying them, and slowly, you know, it's coming off the bucket. So that's kind of my update for water.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Lani?
Yes, I have one. Thanks, Lani. I think as council, we've got to be very cognizant of what you've said there about the trends that you see about increased needs for support or difficulty to pay. Do you anticipate, from what you've seen already in the first 5 months of this year, that will exponentially grow as we go through this year?
Yeah, it's really hard to know. Some people are in different circumstances. They might have no funds and they might have been made redundant. We are seeing more of them come through, but also people wanting to sell houses and they can't move them. Some houses move and then others don't. You know, so it really is a wait and see. If they've got mortgages, which likely their banks are putting pressure on them, if they've got a second home and their interest rates have gone up, they can't always meet those needs. So then they need to sell it. So those types of things, you know, we would then claim that money back through a mortgagee demand process. But when they don't have a mortgage, we don't have any tools to manage people. We've got a strict policy for postponement. So really, a lot of these people, if they've been made redundant here and now, we don't have anything to help them with. It's basically, we can just tell them what the process will be, give them some time, we can review their penalties. So, yeah, there isn't any tools for us to help them. We just have to be empathetic, and that's all we can do.
But it is clear that there are a number of mitigating circumstances, some of them maybe more short term.
Yes.
Is their finding. So, you know, I'm just trying to get a gauge on sort of the prevalence, and is this across the whole district?
Yes, yeah. And I will be interested to see what happens with mortgagee sales. We have seen some property law act notices come through. They come through from lawyers, and that's the start to a mortgagee sale, you know, but some of the recent ones have been people's houses. So they're going to have people that have got no house to live in. So it will be interesting to see how that progresses, if things will change or not. But from the last instalment we just sent out, we are seeing a lot more of those conversations.
And are we having,
Harry, yeah.
Extension, just for the detail, are we having a lot more inquiry about our support system, you know, a reduced payment level of rates? I don't know what you call it, there's an amount per year that people can.
Oh, the rates rebate. So we're very active in our rates rebate. We send them out to everybody who got them last year. I think we processed well over 1,000 of them last year. Those thresholds are always changing, so we need to make sure we're also trying to pick up any people that may be able to get it that aren't getting it, whose circumstances have changed. But that rebate is for the last tax year, so it doesn't pick up anybody who's redundant now. It's really low income earners. Yeah, and as rates are increasing, we are seeing more people are fitting into those thresholds. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, thanks, Mike, for that. I've got one. The example of the papakainga on the bottom of page, in top of page 3 of the report, page 52 of the agenda. So that just clarification, that property wasn't paying rates. Now it's now occupied, they will be paying rates. Is that what we're saying there?
I'm actually not sure if it was unused before. I don't believe it was unused. So I think they've always been paying rates on it. Yeah, I think it's just an example of something that's happened that's positive in the Māori land space in our community. They've worked hard to get those papakainga in there behind the marae, and they've managed to get that opened. So that's great.
Okay, and my last question is on page 55, our water debt. Is that concerned about?
I think with the water debt, you mean the recent arrears?
Yes.
So the recent arrears, some of it, so July, we didn't do any billing in July because we were on hold because of the LTP. So all the billing went into August, and that's when we start billing our first cubic metre rate. So we always get a steady increase in the first 6 months of the rating year because of that. So that is nothing to be worried about. Some of that's just been billed, it's not due. There's the first cubic metre rate included in there, and there's also anybody who doesn't pay their water rates, who has a mortgage, has also been demanded that through the bank. So some of those payments are coming through. So yeah, I don't see that as being a problem. It's just the billing cycles and how that's worked. And it looks worse compared to July because we didn't bill anything in July.
I'm looking at the 90 days, that's all.
The 90 days.
Top of page 55.
Yeah, so we did bill a lot of water books late. We need resourcing to contact people, you know, they might be paying it off slowly. There's some water leakage in there. People are struggling to then afford to fix leakages in their properties. Some of them are complex. A lot of elderly people in the space that we can't, you know, we send out lots of reminders by email, but if we don't have people's email addresses, then we have to send letters, and people accidentally pay things to their rate. So it's really admin heavy in that space.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just one further question. On the bottom of page 55, under your panel there, other, 258 accounts, $189,000. So I guess this is relating to your arrears. What would constitute other?
So they might be people who have leaks and haven't told us. They might just be not paying. You know, lots of people just don't pay their rates.
Yeah.
They don't pay their water rates that you will collect off the mortgagee every year. So there will also be all the mortgagee demands will be in other, and any that we're just doing general debt collection on. They might have accidentally paid their land rates. They
That point, yeah.
might, yeah. There is lots of, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One last question. Thank you for this report. Right. So the people who are on a payment plan, if they're on a payment plan, you review that payment plan on an annual basis when the next rates are set?
Yeah, so what we try and do, and actually payment arrangements are also very admin heavy, and there's a lot of admin heavy things. Direct debits can also be admin heavy as well. So with a payment arrangement, what we're trying to do, and remember, you can see a reduction here in the payment arrangements because some people have paid their arrears debt off for land rates and now they're paying off the current. So that's why it drops down throughout the year. And some more people might go on a payment arrangement, so it fluctuates a lot. But what we try and do is we have this bring up in our system that we can check what the payment arrangement looks like. Are you meeting the arrangements? We'll push it out and we'll check it again in a couple of months. But remember, this is only the arrears, it doesn't show current. So the more people we have in a payment arrangement, the more manual work we have to do to say, are you paying this? We try and get people on direct debit to stop that. But if they can't meet the threshold, or if they actually can't commit to a direct debit, then that's also not a good plan.
Yeah, all I'm saying is just, yes, you've got a process in place, which is good news, right? I'm aware of one council that didn't have a process in place, and so it was into a bit of it.
So we try at the end of the rating year to review them all. We'll credit their penalties as per our penalty remission scheme. And then we will give them the new amounts to pay. So that's all very admin heavy as well.
Oh.
Yeah, so we try and help people as much as we can, because not everybody can put their accounts on direct debit.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I have a mover that we receive, note the report? Mayor Craig, driver seconder.
I can second it.
Thank you. Sorry, councillor Erin, you're just getting pipped at the post there. Right, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Next item, 4.6, our Building Consent Authority, our BCA accreditation report. Thank you, Alistair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take it the report has been read. The outcome of the most recent accreditation assessment, BCA, but delighted with the result. This is by far the best outcome we've had. And it's a sign of the continuous improvement pathway that we've been on, which was recognised by IANZ as best practice. But happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions?
We had a good presentation from you about this to council. So yeah, I just want to say it's satisfying to see this occurring. Just noting that we heard from formerly Jesse and Alana, that we're seeing an increase in mortgage sales. And are you seeing any movement in what's happening out there in the building game?
Certainly seen an increase in November in building consent numbers, plus
rising.
Yes, and but the value of building works per consent is very noticeable.
Okay,
which is pleasing.
Okay. So no questions, Alistair? Well done, good.
Thank you.
This is actually, this is like our good friends from Deloitte, right? I haven't seen a BCA report where they haven't done any minor corrective actions. The fact that they've actually signed them all off as being achievable is a good news result. Thank you. So can I have a mover?
Yep.
Thank you. Mayor Craig, seconded.
I can second.
Thank you, councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. 4.7, our LGFA annual report. Thanks, Sue.
Yes, through the chair. So this is, I'm just putting this in front of the Audit Risk and Compliance Committee because this is our main lender and so seniorly, how to go. They've their budgets been able to exceed their budgets, which is good news because of the fact that more people are borrowing off them. They've also increased their lending this year quite significantly, especially to council CCOs, and you'll recall that they opened this up, I think about a year ago to CCOs. And then they've obviously been having discussions with the government and confirmed what's going to happen in the future. They can loan to an equivalent of 500% of operating revenues. And obviously, we hope that people can afford that type of borrowings, which is, it's all very well to be able to loan a lot of money, but it's actually affordability that is the issue. So, but that I think they met about 80% of their KPIs for the year, and the ones that they didn't meet were not as significant or not key. So it's just there to show that they're doing well, which is good to know.
Any questions? Can I was also at the LGFA Borrowers Day last week.
Yes.
Sorry?
You said you were going, yeah.
Yeah, so this was actually interesting presentation. They've just had their Standard & Poor's credit rating. It had to be downgraded because the New Zealand government, they actually exceeded the New Zealand government in terms of their theoretical rating, but it had to be downgraded because there's no way a quasi-government organisation, right, can actually have a higher rating than the government, which to me is actually gives us, right, we are a guarantor, gives us that there is actually good processes to protect the need for a call on any of our funds. All right, thank you, Sue. I think the LGFA is the best thing in terms of it's happened to local government for a very long time, and it's been going now for 15 years. It's a success story, right? So I'm happy to move that we receive the Local Government Funding Agency Annual Report for 24. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mike. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Next item, 4.8, page 99. Welcome, Dennis and Jonathan.
Good morning. Good morning. Through the chair, I take it that the report has been read and we're here for questions. And my first little comment is to introduce a new health and safety manager here at Kaipara District Council, Jonathan. And so today I'm sort of just doing a little bit of a handover. So I wrote this particular report because it related to the time that I was the health and safety manager. But going forward, it will be Jonathan that will be representing these reports.
Right. Thank you. Any questions? Have you got anything further to add?
No, other than, look, I think the system is working as we would like it to do. You will see that our numbers of reporting are still very low. Our staff, thankfully, aren't caught up in too many things that can cause potential harm. I think what works well is our early reporting, so around hazards and near misses. And we try and get onto those very quickly and try and make sure that those are resolved so that they don't lead to further harm. You'll see that some of our audits that we have done on our own contractors is a little bit patchy, a little bit down. And that's certainly one of the things that Jonathan will be concentrating in his new role, is that he will be very much out working alongside our project managers and our contract managers, really just providing that extra lens and making sure that health and safety is being managed effectively. I just put a tiny little bit of commentary in here. In the period that we were reporting on, 20% of the audits that our staff were involved in, there were room for improvement. And so what we do there, if the situation can be changed on site, that's exactly what we do. Try and get the situation to be compliant as quickly as we can. And only if there was a really big breach, or we thought that either worker safety or public safety was going to be impinged in any way, would we ever look to stop work. So it's very much about having those conversations with our contractors on site and making sure that they can manage those demands.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Councillor Aaron. You got a comment or question?
Yeah, just a question. Thanks so much for the report. Health and safety and wellbeing report, and there's only a little small table at the end about wellbeing. I was just interested to know if wellbeing is measured at all with the staff and how that's done.
Yes, through, thanks very much, and through the chair. The wellbeing component of health and safety sort of proper has moved over to people and capability. So actually, we will probably need to work a little bit more closely with them so that we can provide that information under one report heading. So at this stage, I don't know if they're going to report on it separately or if it would come into this report here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just following on from Councillor Aaron's query there, Glynis, I have, and that's good to know that it's moving over to people and capability. I note in this report that there is almost a prevalence of commentary on contractors or the impacts or effects of physical issues, hazards, etc., etc. What I'm concerned about, and we've already had conversations this morning about the real pressures on staff. Now, I've had an experience for 9 years hearing H&S reports on staff welfare and the likes from Gulf NZ. And I think that there's an awful lot more focus on staff and staff welfare. And I just don't know that we're not getting the real risk factor for our staff in terms of supporting our staff here through what we're measuring thus far. And, I'd like to put that on the table as a concern and a real risk, because it's fine to talk about the hazard side of things, and, we trip up or fall over or whatever else. But, it's important that we as governance show and highlight, I think, that concern for the staff welfare.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chief Executive, brought you back.
Jack in the box. Look, appreciate the commentary, actually, I really do, and the acknowledgement of that. Staff wellbeing is really important to us, and we are bringing the briefing, I think it's next week, which has the final transition report to you next week at the briefing, I believe. Part of that report is going to produce the results of our engagement survey. So we do an engagement, we've done a pulse engagement survey in the last 3 weeks to understand how our staff are feeling. And where they're at post restructure. So we've got a benchmark and we've got actions to work to try and lift that engagement. It's reduced from something like 62, without letting the cat out of the bag, 62 down to 42%. I think it's dropped 20 percentage points as far as the engagement of our people. And commentary around that has been high levels of stress, high workloads, that sort of thing. So, from a CE and management team and managers perspective, we are working on actions that we can implement with our people to try and acknowledge what we can do in that space and help. it's not strictly speaking complete picture for well-being, but it is a measure of where our people are feeling at the moment.
Okay, that's,
And if I could just add on to that, health and safety sits in a very funny sort of space. Part of our role is really to make sure that looking at indicators that might give us an idea of what something might happen. So we're always trying to look forward. That doesn't take away the staff wellbeing component, but we're always trying to sort of balance that space. So in terms of our reporting, our staff can report on things such as workplace aggression. They can report on bullying, harassment, stress levels. Actually, our staff are very stoic, is what I would say. I often hear murmurings, but I don't necessarily always can get them to put that forward into reporting, which is a very common practice across New Zealand. And again, with the restructure, people are finding their ways. What I do know is that our EAP usage actually went down in this quarter than the quarter before. So during that kind of the flux leading up to the restructure, we saw a little bit more sort of, people needing to reach out. And then actually, as we went through that restructure, people have sort of got back into kind of boots and all, head down, bottom up.
knew where they were at with jobs, etc. And sorry, just, that's great. And it's good that we're going to see, I think, an elevation. The question I might ask is, we meet or risk and finance, quarterly. Will we get reporting on this aspect at monthly council meetings? Is that part of a plan, or even bi-monthly?
So through you, Mr. Chair, part of the objectives that you've set as a council to me is to do a culture review. That's part of what we'll be bringing back to the council through the briefings. I mean, quarterly is probably too far apart to really get a good picture. By the time you understand where things are at, there's another quarter gone by, right? So yeah, we'll bring that to council.
I guess my reference there is that we know when it comes to well-being and like, things can change really quickly. And I just want us to be able to be across that. And I'll finish by saying, welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. Councillor Ash, a comment or question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a small comment in terms of presentation by contractors. I guess there's a bigger risk for the council to managing health and safety of contractors. And I understood in the last presentation from Downers, the major contractors, both for parks and roading, is that the new risk-based policy, which the central government has put in, is not yet put in place, which opens another room for taking risk-based approach, which means lesser regulations. My question is, would it be favorable to the council employees or it'll be more stressful to them because now the contractors will have a more loose kind of handle on things?
Through the chair, can I just confirm, are you talking specifically about roading? And are you talking about the change from a very prescriptive system that was called COPTIM to a risk-based approach?
That's very right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right, Glenys. That's what I'm asking.
I think whenever there is a change in direction, that most definitely there is a time when there's some uncertainty. But I think that given that there was a very big lead-in moving us away from a very prescriptive kind of traffic management approach in New Zealand to one that's much more centred on risk management, that echoes what we're asked to do in the Health and Safety at Work Act, actually that transition period has been reduced. Definitely, when our staff go out and do observations and audits on our contractors, one of the things that we do find is that they have inadequate at times, and I made mention of this in the report, that they have inadequate traffic management plans for the type of activity that they're doing. And that's often because things change. So you put a traffic management plan in before you go to do the work, but then risk is always dynamic. It shifts and changes depending on the flow of traffic and other factors that are going on. So it is about having a conversation, and we are certainly having those conversations. And again, what that does is it reduces some of that uncertainty.
Thank you so much.
about that. All right. Any other questions? I've got one, right? And I'm down in the weeds. I know, my apologies, Mr. Chief Executive. Right? In terms of the departments here listed on page 6 of your report, we talk about the number of audits that have been taken place. One area that worries me a little bit, right, is our rubbish collection, and which is, I don't see that as a specific. Yes, we've got waste minimisation, but I don't see.
That's implicit within there.
Yes, yeah. To me, I see, right, because that's a high risk, right, and you just need to look at what's happened elsewhere around the country in terms of fatalities and serious injuries. That's something that I would ask Jonathan, right, cast his expert eye over. The question I have we actually got, for the level of risk that we're assuming, have we actually got the right audit procedures in place?
It's good to see that Jonathan is writing that down. And
yeah. Yeah, it's just big, I don't want the chief executive to be fined like the ports of Auckland.
no, that's right. No, we don't.
That's actually quite interesting. Yep. And I also, and just mirror what's been said about wellbeing, right? I know it's a council thing, but I would actually like to see potentially some lead indicators on the wellbeing, right? That actually saying is, yes, we are considering it, right? And yes, you do see spikes, right? But have we actually got our eyes open for it? That's the assurance that I would be looking for. I like the word assurance, right? Getting assurance. All right. Thank you very much, Dennis, for your last report here, and wish you well in your new role, and thank you for work in the space today.
No problem at all. Fantastic.
Yep, next we'll do the next one. Yep. So can I have a mover that we note the health, safety and wellbeing update report? Mover. Thank you, Councillor Ash. Yep. Seconded, Craig. All those in favour, please say aye. 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 Just from an admin perspective, we will do the next report 4.9, and then we will take a 5-10-minute break. Okay. So I've got Catherine online to talk about these projects. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine.
Good morning, Chair and elected members. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. Great
one. Well, in Virginia's absence today, I'm just giving you guys a quick update as per her report. I will take it as read, but I did just want to highlight to the committee that probably the biggest piece of work that we've got at the moment is the DC policy review, which is taking us a bit to get into. We are preparing for a full council briefing update in December, so coming up in the following weeks. And there's a lot of work going into that at the moment, so that's been pretty consuming. So I don't know if the committee has any questions on the review. Virginia has included the timeframes in her report, and we will be working very hard to stick to those because we're trying to achieve a full review before the triennium ends, which means September will hopefully be or have adopted the new DC policy there. So any questions on Virginia's report?
Any questions? I've got one, right? And it's, look, I understand the importance of DC policies. I've had some emails from various staff on this one, right? Talk to Sue about it later. But also I see revenue and financing policy is also being reviewed, right? I see we need to make sure those are actually 100% lined up, right? And I think that's just that, right? If we don't get them lined up, we're going to have some significant problems. So it's just a bit of it's more of a commentary rather than a question, just from my
noted
work that I've done elsewhere. All right, no other comments. Therefore, do I have a mover for the recommendation. Mayor Craig, do I have a seconder? Mike, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Catherine. That was short and
Thank you,
sweet.
committee. No worries.
Right, so we'll adjourn and reconvene. Let's be generous, 10 past, because you always take longer. 10 past 11.
Apologies. That again for Councillor.
This is councillors online.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gillian, do you mind?
Right, sure.
Reminding?
Kia ora, I'm Gillian Bruce. I'm the Business Support Manager. I'm bringing this paper to let you know our timing around the updating of the procurement policy and strategy. I had initially planned to start updating our policy this year, and our procurement strategy is overdue for review, and our policy will be due for review at the end of this current financial year. Since beginning this work, I've become aware of some other work that is happening in the environment. So MB is currently updating their business processes, and I am expecting that that will affect some of the policies that we may want to include in our policy. In addition to that, there are conversations that have started within Northland around a regional strategy that would look to support procurement across the region. And my thought is that the timing is not quite right to be updating our policy and our strategy. In looking at some of the comments that the auditors have passed on to us, most of what they're saying can be managed by reviewing our procedures. A procedure manual is 140 pages long. It's not easily accessed, and I believe that a lot of improvements that we could make would be by improving our manual, its accessibility, and educating staff on our procurement procedures. So in summary, I believe that the most urgent action is to review our procedures and to defer the policy review until MB has finished their work.
Any questions or comments?
When did you say they were finishing that work?
They haven't been specific about that. It's currently at the stage where they've identified all of their issues and they're starting to think about how they might address them. Our policy is written at a very high level, and most of the controls that we need to do would sit under that within the manuals. And I believe that those are the issues that our auditors have identified and where we really need to be focusing. They've asked us to look at how we have implemented the AOG guidelines. From my reading of the procedures, they're very process-based, and that what we could do is include more guidance in those to help people make good, sensible decisions. Rather than updating our policy at this stage, my thought is that we're better to focus on updating the procedures.
Any other questions or comments? You're not going to like me. I would, MB, right? I'm nervous, right? Because I say into next year, but with the resources, it might be the end of the following year, right? We are, now correct me if I'm wrong, we are only required to follow the principles, but we're not actually required to follow the rules as a local authority, right? So if we're actually comfortable with the principles of the current guidance from MB, right? Are there any fatal flaws with our current procurement policy and strategy?
Not really, no.
Okay. I mean, to me, that's the question I have, right? What I am.
So through the chair, just simplicity would be good, because 148 pages.
Oh, no, I'm not talking. No, the man. No, about the man. That's executive. Yeah. Right, so I want to get our role clear here. I think the job of governance, right, and the role of this committee, I just want to clarify those roles. So the role of council is to set the strategy, which sets the overall direction. The policy then is say how, what's council's direction of how that strategy will be implemented with some guidance, high level guidance. Then the policy, so the manual,
yes,
sits with the chief executive.
Yes.
All we need to know, get assurance, is the policy So the manual meets the policy direction
Yes.
and that the manual reduces risk. We don't need, as governors, need to play in the manual space.
No.
Because we're not experts in that area.
Right.
So to me, I would be wanting to see I don't disagree with the manual as where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, but that's not our responsibility per se. We just need to say, we need assurance from the chief executive / you that we've got a good procedure, including manual. But the question I have is, is the procurement policy / strategy out of, is it a significant piece of work to actually update that? Because what I don't want to see happen is you go through all this work with the procurement manual, then council changes the procurement policy and you've got to go back and do further rework. That's the risk that I'm trying to avoid. You want to just comment on that?
Through the chair, most of the risks that the auditors have raised are in the detailed manual, which, as you've said, you do have purview over because they are managing some of the risks.
Yeah.
So you don't, as you said, you don't need to know the detail, but they do need to be managed. The policy sits at a high enough level that it won't change a lot if it was to be reviewed. The strategy is out of date. It refers to our previous guidelines, our previous goals and mission. Preferably, they would be taken out of it so that it doesn't need to be updated every 3 years and reflect at too low a level. Given the work that's happening around the region as well, I think the strategy will need to be reworked broadly. I don't believe that the procedures will change a lot if the policy changed, because the policy sits at a high enough level for us to be able to adjust the procedures to be able to manage any controls or risks that we see. So I don't believe that updating the procedures at this stage will prevent us from being able to adapt the policy at a later stage.
Okay. Right, thank you for that. All right. Yeah. Councillor Ash, you've got a question?
Yes, Chair. Thank you for that. Thank you, Gillian. I just had clarification, more of a question. You mentioned that you can modify the procedures without waiting for policy. I always thought that policy is a fundamental document and the procedures are based on policy. But my question is, OAG, are they comfortable with the whatever we have, or what's your reading of that? Is there room for deviations of that policy as it stands?
The OAG doesn't have any control over what councils do, but they do produce a set of guidelines. So, sorry, I mean, they do have control over what council does, and that they have a review function at a high level when there are risks or things to be managed. The OAG produces guidelines and they are considered to be best practice. Some of the feedback that we had from our auditors is that we need to ensure that we are following best practice guidelines. Now, in my review of our procedures, they're very good. It's step 1, do this, step 2, do that. Where they're failing is in not providing some of the information and guidelines for the staff to be able to make sound decisions. So it's missing some of the advice that would help people make choices and decisions around what kind of evaluation method to use. So where I think we can improve is by including some of the OAG guidelines into our procedures.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions? What I'm going to propose is actually take out, in terms of the recommendations, I'll take out A. Right? I actually think that I have no problem with B and C. the issue I have is I actually think that I like the idea of that regional strategy we should always start with a strategy. So I would actually like to say is we actually, we note the planning review of the procurement strategy and policy, right? Not be, and then change it, be deferred until clarification is sought or direction on the regional procurement strategy. To me, that is actually the important piece. The MB stuff, right? And why I'm saying that is the MB stuff is actually almost like advice, like audit, OAG stuff, right? Yeah. And I don't want to wait another year for MB to make up its mind and then change it, etc. And right, so I'm being a bit naughty, but I think we should be concentrating on our own strategy, developing our own policy, and then comparing it with what MB has said, rather than. Otherwise, we are encouraging government to dictate how procurement should happen in our region. And I think that's wrong. We should be saying, this is what we as a collective, right, want to achieve by way of procurement for our district and our region. That's my personal view, looking for comments from.
Yeah, no, I think that's good thinking.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I'm happy to second it if it's a motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Aaron? You happy? Yep, okay.
Yep,
So
sorry, thumbs up.
Yep, so I'm happy to move that. Did you get all that?
Did you get the critical clarification on
The regional strategy, okay? Regional procurement strategy, okay? And if it doesn't happen, right, well then if it's not happening, well then we just move on. And as you say, I don't believe, from the comments you've said, I don't believe that the policy actually requires a whole lot of work. It's the manual. So that enables you to concentrate on getting the manual, which is where the real work happens.
So the controls are.
Controls are in place.
So the chair, are you happy with B and C?
Sorry, we held B and C stay. So this replaces A. Okay, and I also, sorry, with the movers second this permission, or maybe it's a question, how often will you actually report progress to this committee on that? That's my other.
How often would you like progress reported?
I don't want a chapter and verse, right? I don't want to say we've done, right? But I would like some high level assurance until such time as the manual is operational.
Right.
So through the chair, we can put that quarterly in the policy item that's put to count.
Yep, that's fine.
Great.
That's fine. I don't want to see, right, a report just for the sake of reporting. All right, so we've got a mover and a seconder.
Yep.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you very much and good luck, Gillian. Right, next item 4.11, page 115, past audit recommendations. Thank you, Sue.
Yes, so these you'll see the ones outstanding, particularly Deloitte's, they'll be taken out and replaced with the new ones. Basically, a lot of these are repeated. In fact, they're all repeated in the new Deloitte's constructed report that we looked at this morning. Other key ones there that haven't been resolved at the moment that relate to Kaiwi Lakes. And at yesterday's meeting, the council made a resolution there to keep Kaiwi Lakes. So these will be things that will have to be taken into consideration, seeing how we're going to progress the management of Kaiwi Lakes and continue to have that in-house. So that's, it's been a lot cleared, but there'll be a lot more coming on with the latest.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, we've got a recommendation there that we note the resolution of past audit recommendations, November 24. Do I have a mover?
Yep.
Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, seconded.
Councillor Ash, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Next item, 4.2, your regulatory compliance update. Thanks, Sue.
Yeah, this is really pleasing. Things that, because looking at both building consents and resource consents, they're, it's been processed 100%. With building consents, good to hear that they're going up because you can see for the past 3 years they've been really low compared to just the peaks before that. And in resource consents, they're not quite as low, but we are behind in revenue. We're with building consents and resource consents today. Apart from that, Paparoa, notice that's an issue. We're looking at that with the number of houses where wastewater is, they just haven't got the land to dispose of their own wastewater. That is going to become a problem for us in the future. And we are discussing the potential for a scheme, but before we do that, we just want to ascertain how many properties are actually impacted at the moment, and what they can actually do to improve that themselves. And you'll see an infrastructure has been some overflows, but the non-compliances are being acted on. So there's nothing that stands out in the report.
Thank you. Any questions? Apart from the risk for Paparoa? I mean, is there likely to be a directive from anybody for council to put a scheme in?
There could be, if it goes long enough. At the moment, of course, the NRC has obviously given them a bait and we're working with the residents to try and work out what can they do on their own land. Is there some improvement that can be got? And no issue with leaks or anything like that. But it's impossible for them if they've got a small section, which was fine many years ago, but it's not fine now.
Yep.
And with Paparoa, we'd have to look at, if we were looking at a scheme, we'd have to provide it for the future because there's a lot of, and looking at the areas, there seems to be areas in Paparoa where there's new housing and somewhere there's old housing, and we'd have to look at potentially being prepared for the areas where there's old housing, because there's going to be more of these coming that are at reach and don't comply.
And wasn't it, through the chair, wasn't there an issue in Paparoa with some of the commercial area? Also? It's
definitely the commercial area right there near
that main
the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the worst affected. But there is quite an old area up the back street there as well. That's just something to be aware of.
The risk. Question I have is, I'm aware of another community with a bit more advanced on progressing a scheme, but the scheme's going to cost a rather large amount of money, like potentially $100,000 per property. If it doesn't proceed, under the planning rules, the regional council it becomes sort of like managed retreat. So basically, that's the consequences of it. Is that something that has been discussed within our state? Because if a scheme is not affordable, right? What actually happens, right? Because the people can't pay for it.
So through the chair, what we're looking at, we haven't got to that spot yet where we're actually discussing costs, but there's new things happening throughout the world. Like we were initially, I think, talking about a scheme of $2.5 million. The smarter things we're doing overseas that we could do here for $1 million. And also what we have done, what the council did 3 years ago, was bring all wastewater together so that if you are a scheme where you get higher capital costs coming in, everyone helps you do it. helps you with the costs. What we could do in this, one potential for this, bringing on new schemes, is to say, you have to pay this and we'll rate, it might cost 100,000 per, but what we could say is that, look, it'll only cost you 40, but, and the rest of the balance of the debt will go into the scheme and they'll pay that off.
Yeah.
And you'll now join the new stormwater scheme, storage scheme. So that's one way of.
Because presumably we don't have any development contributions.
No,
Not
for Paparoa.
Although, there have been new developments done there.
Yes, and they put in their own schemes.
Own schemes, okay.
So, but what I'd envisage would happen is that infrastructure would look not at only the 16 houses that are affected of this, they'd look at, well, building a scheme, take more, and there could be some
bigger capacity,
as well as contributions from those properties that are affected, and then looking at bringing them into a total scheme.
A collective, okay, so that's all.
Okay. All right. And of course, the Te Mata Apawai are looking at bringing the discharge requirements as responsibility of them and taking it out of the RMA.
Oh.
So that was announced at LGFA. Was it last week, Jessie?
Sorry, yes.
Last week, Alan Cragnell talked about, so they hope to have those standards out next May, mid next.
12 months, I thought.
Oh, it was less than that. I thought towards the beginning.
Timeframe.
In March, April next year. So any new consents, you won't actually need a resource consent from the regional council. You'll need to meet the standards set by Te Mata Apawai or anything new. And they're talking about having New Zealand standards for discharge to land, freshwater and ocean.
Yeah, well, that's
rather than you needing to apply to have a consent from the regional council, because at the moment there are 300 schemes across the country and there are 300 standards across the whole country.
Yeah.
So that might be also something to hold out for as well. Right, okay, nothing further. Can I have a recommendation? Move for the recommendation.
I'll move.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Can I have a mover that we move into public excluded?
Happy to move.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Is that Councillor Jonathan or Councillor Mayor Craig?
Yep.
Mayor Craig.
I just have a question. Sorry, I just have a question, Chair. We have those items displayed here, which will be discussed in the public excluded. Is it usual to put these items in the public agenda?
I can answer that.
Thank you.
But yeah, yes, we do that in every open agenda. We always list the items that will be discussed in public excluded, because we have to list the grounds for excluding the public and the reason why under the appointment.
So this happens in all the council meeting as well?
Every single agenda.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a move and a seconder. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. We will stop for 2 seconds. Wait for. Right.